Was there enough light?
Oh yeah, the light is perfect. Okay, so look at me.
Yeah, where are we now?
Today is December
The
9th, 2014.
It's today's Tuesday.
Tuesday, and we're at Joe Woolf's house
In Ilania.
in Ilania, Moshav Ilania.
Yeah.
And this is our second interview. And we left off yesterday with your journey to Israel.
Did we? I forgot.
And we're gonna head back. We're gonna start back there. And you were telling me about saying goodbye to your parents.
Yeah.
And getting on the plane to Rome, which you guys had many stops.
Yeah.
And you actually told me about, I was reading last night in your testimony in Machal website.
The long story.
Yeah, I read part of it. I read the part that we're going to talk about today. And you were telling me there, you were talking there something about that you had a layover in Khartoum,
Yes.
in Sudan.
Yeah.
And that the Sudanese soldiers were going to join the Egyptian soldiers.
They had a parade in the town.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. But we didn't see them.
Okay, you didn't see them.
No, we read the English. Khartoum was then an English colony, so they had a newspaper in English.
Okay, tell me about what you
And
read.
we read about it with a nice big picture of them parading in Khartoum. Later on, our guys in the 9th Brigade and then the guys in, no, not in 9th, in the 8th Brigade, many overseas volunteers fought against them in the Negev. My own brigade was mostly in the north.
So these were Sudanese soldiers
Sudanese soldiers had a part of the Egyptian army.
who were fighting in the Negev.
Were fighting in the Negev, yes.
How ironic is that you guys were cross paths with them? And
Well, the world's full of ironies. Another irony guys will mention to you that our first fighter planes were German Messerschmitts. Now, Sid Cohn, who was commander of 101 Squadron, South African, commented of the irony of us flying the dreaded German aeroplane against Egyptian Spitfires, which were British planes. So did Gordon Levitt in his book. He wrote a book. He was an English Goy who volunteered for us. His book appeared first in Hebrew. It was called Goy Shel Shabbat.
we're gonna,
Stop there.
yeah, we gotta focus
You-
on our.
We go out of many branches,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. We gotta gotta try and stay chronological.
Yeah.
And I am just going to, and that's my job. My job is to keep it focused.
Well, you can always edit the shit.
We're not editing. That's what I'm saying. So your journey from Johannesburg to Rome, besides this issue with in Sudan, is there anything significant that happened on that journey?
Now, as I wrote here, we had a quiet trip, including the sea, and I said to you, the Mediterranean was in August, was smooth as the other guys had stormy seas.
Sure. But I'm talking about the trip from Johannesburg to Rome now.
No incidents whatsoever.
Okay, so you get to Rome, and you guys go to this.
We met by the Beitar representative who takes us to the camp, the displaced person camp in Ladispoli, which is to the west of Rome on the coast there, not far from the Anzio beachhead, which was famous in World War II history when Americans landed there.
So you guys are going to this camp where there are refugees from Holocaust
Romania.
survivors.
Yeah.
How does this? What is your impression when you first see these people?
Well, the ones we saw were already quite healthy. They survived for a few years. It was 1948. Some of our people had more closer connection with them. We were a big group and we sort of kept together. But as I said, there's a dance hall opposite to what you call it, and there were a lot of refugees, not only from our camp, Jewish people. I danced with young girls there, Jewish, spoke Yiddish to them. I don't remember any incidents, particularly what I asked them, what we talked about. Maybe the mothers were looking for rich South African husbands. Who knows?
Do you and this whole time that you're in, let's call it this whole time that you're in limbo between Johannesburg and Israel,
Yeah.
you're with a group of devoted Beitar
Revision,
people.
yes, revisionists.
But you're not ideologically connected to them.
I'm not ideologically connected to them.
Is there any? Does that come out at any point? Is that talked about? Is it an
No
issue?
arguments. As a matter of fact, in this book, Henry Katzer wrote that I was, myself and Jaime Jossman were the leaders of this group.
And you're not connected to them at all?
I knew a lot of them. They lived in the same street as I did.
So how? Okay, so you're not you're not a Beitar person.
Not then. No.
Not at all.
I never, even not now. Yes.
Yeah. So in Rome, how many weeks are you guys there for at this camp?
I wish we knew exactly. Because
A month.
I think less than a month. Because look, if we arrived on the 24th, we must have left at least 5 days before from Naples. So say that's the 19th. So maybe we flew off in the late July.
Okay.
Jaime Jossman, I think, has the date when we flew off. He lives in Herzliya.
You're at this camp in Italy. Are you guys getting any news flashes of what's happening in the war? Are you getting any?
Yes, we're getting. I don't remember them. We did some training, basic drills, training with small arms secretly and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, I remember something very interesting by just looking at the picture. The commander of this Beitar camp looked so much like one of the company commanders in the 89th Commando Battalion later, who was killed in action fighting against the Egyptians. I've seen his picture and I'm sure it's the same bloody guy, but we'll never know.
How many, just for a logistic question, how many people are you on the Beitar group?
It's exactly, I think 21 there were. There were more actually because there were 2 plane loads, but on the ship I've got the passenger. I had the passenger manifest. It's written here exactly. We had the leader of the revisionist movement in one of the aeroplanes. His brother.
In South African, the leader of the South African.
Yeah, Raphael Kotlowitz, who was a lawyer. He opened a law office here in Israel afterwards. He was led down by his daughter, or his son-in-law told me that no, not his son-in-law, his brother-in-law told me that he was led down by Beg and he was promised a cabinet post, but it didn't work out in our bloody coalition promises system. I've got the actual, there's a chapter, chapter 11, at sea, no that's, yeah, another leader was Otto Seidman, who lived in our neighborhood of the Beitar. Maybe it was the beginning of chapter 12, new arrival.
That's okay. I don't want to get held up on it too much,
Well,
but you're saying about 20 to 30 people.
About just slightly, altogether, not all of us came on the ship.
Of course.
Raphael Kotlowitz was busy with Etzel work. He flew on to Geneva.
But it's funny because the Etzel is still operating at this time as an independent.
In Jerusalem, yes.
But also outside. But
no, they weren't operating. By that time, it was after the Altalena.
Yeah.
And they'd been absorbed into the army.
Where are you? When the Altalena happens, you're still in South Africa.
Yes.
Do you guys hear about it? Does
I
the news
remember
get to you?
about it. I was already. I might have been already with the Beitar group.
Yeah. Were they disappointed about it? What were their feelings?
They
what did you
were
hear?
angry about
Yeah.
it. Yes, yes.
It was a big episode.
Big episode. As a matter of fact, I know of 5 Machal who were killed, who came on Altalena. There might have been more, There might have been some
Who were the
French.
5 people that you knew? Do you know their names?
Yes, there were 2 Cuban volunteers, young Cuban volunteers. I believe one of them was the son of a chief rabbi of Cuba. They were killed in the shelling, and half Jewish French volunteer of Tunisian background was killed in the shelling. This soldier of the Tunisian background had won the Croix de Guerre in the World War fighting for de Gaulle's Free French Army. Then 2 others, one Joseph Kahn, an American, who was involved in the Altalena from its purchase in America, equipping it and bringing it here. He managed to slip away and get to Jerusalem and joined the Etzel unit, was killed in the 10-day fighting in July, the heavy fighting between the 2 truces. So was a British guy called Cashman, what was his first name? Not what his first name was. He also slipped away, joined another Etzel unit and killed in a different place in Jerusalem in the same heavy 10-day fighting. I didn't know that in South Africa, of course.
Okay, I have a question to ask you. What kind of, besides the fact that you're coming to Israel to fight in the War of Independence,
I'm a good Jew boy, yes.
But you have no ideological preference. If it's Ben Gurion's people or Begin's people, you don't care.
Yeah, if I would have been put in the Palmach, I would have gone in the Palmach. We went to, but there was no Etzel anymore then. One of my school chums, Lou Kotzen, he served in Italy in the South African army, and he got to Israel quite early and actually took part in military activities of the Etzel before he came. He eventually joined the tank corps because he'd had training in the South African army in the tanks.
Okay, so we're gonna go back to Rome now. You guys get on the boat. Which you told me was a luxury yacht before, and it was transformed into, it was probably all stripped down.
With bunks in the holes and stuff like that, yes.
And on your ship is the 20 of you, plus refugees, weapons, anything?
It was, I think, a Greek crew, if I remember.
The name of the ship is?
Dolores.
Dolores. And you guys leave Rome in late August 1948.
That's right.
From Naples.
Say mid-August.
Mid-August?
We arrived on the 24th.
Right, we're going to get to that in a sec. What is on your ship?
What is on it?
Yeah, what's on it?
Oh, I don't remember.
Is there, okay, there's refugees?
The refugees.
Yeah, you guys?
All the volunteers, we all slept on deck on stretchers because it was such a beautiful, quiet voyage.
Is there anything other significant anything else of significance that you remember on the boat, on the journey to Israel, except for the calm weather? I remember reading that a baby was born.
A baby was born, and Dr. Alan Price was in our group. Became very good friends. He died in Israel, some 10 years ago at Protea village in Tel Mond. His wife died just recently.
Mm-hmm. Did he deliver the baby?
He delivered the baby. As a matter of fact, when he boarded the ship, the Haganah, I think it was the Haganah representative, they organized the ships, told him that he was going to be the ship's doctor. So he was called, and eventually in the 1993 reunion we had, he and I traced this baby because I had the ship's manifest. And written on the side is a baby not yet named, born to this couple.
Sure.
And we traced him. And we had tea with them, had a very nice afternoon in Tivon.
Do you remember the name of this baby or no?
Yeah, I've got it somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else of significance happened?
I might even have it in the story. Oh, you know whose story it is? I think in Alan Price's personal story.
So you arrive in the port of Haifa.
Yeah.
August 24th.
Yeah.
1948.
lodge belonging to the, more right to the Begans, came and took us up and took us a tour of the bay.
Who took you?
A launch, people from the Beitar in Israel, or the Etzel people. They took us on a tour, the volunteers.
Wait, so you get off the boat. Don't you have to go through immigration?
Afterwards, yes.
After?
Yeah, I think they even took us on this ride from the ship, and we only disembarked the next morning. We docked, or we were in the Haifa Bay already in the previous evening. We disembarked the next morning, the 24th.
When you disembark from the ship,
Yeah.
what's going on in your head?
Oh, nothing, just excitement of being there. Can't remember, who knows. Yeah, we're in Israel.
I know, but you went through a long journey to get here. You must have some sort of emotional feelings.
I don't remember, maybe I'm not an emotional person, who knows.
Okay. So you guys disembark from the ship and you are taken by a group of Beitar people.
Before we disembarked, just on a tour of the Haifa Harbour Bay area in a launch, and we went back on the ship, and the next morning we disembarked. We first went to I think it's written there, to where the old Technion is for medical tests. Whether we slept there or not for one night, I don't remember. I don't think so. Then we were taken by bus, and we dropped there were a few buses. Some of the immigrants from our ship were dropped at a camp in Hadera, and the Machal volunteers were taken to Telodvinsky, which was the main absorption camp at the time.
Where was Telodvinsky? Where is it located?
Today it's Tel HaShomer.
Tel HaShomer.
Yeah. The IDF archives is there now.
So you get to Telodvinsky.
Yeah. And as I said, things were still disorganized. They still are disorganized. They didn't know what to do with us, so they sent in, not only my group, you'll find it in a lot of personal stories.
Sure.
They gave us 3 or 4 days leave, which I went to look up an old shtetl friend of my father, and his 16 or 15-year-old son, who'd learnt English at school, was my guide. He took me around places in Tel Aviv.
What kind of places do you? This is very interesting to me, actually. You're 19 years old, right? 20, 19?
I'm already 20.
You're 20. And what's the name of your father's friend? Do you remember?
Yeah, Joffe.
Joffe.
Yeah.
And his son is taking
His son, I couldn't remember the first name. He became a lawyer, and I noticed in the Mariv edition of all the units, Joffe, who looked just like his father, earned a medal in the Yom Kippur War.
The son.
Yeah, I'm sure it was him, but I've got no proof. I went after we had a very difficult klita, and one day in a trip to Tel Aviv, I looked up the address. The mother was still alive, and she told me he'd become a lawyer, and I didn't contact him. We had a very difficult klita, so and we were right in the north.
You're talking about your klita in 1968.
When we arrived in 1969, we arrived in January 69, yes.
What do you remember of Tel HaShomer, Telodvinsky, when you got there?
That was an old British camp. As a matter of fact, it was used by the Americans during the World War. Long bungalows. I think we slept in tents. We were given army numbers.
Anything significant that happened in those few days at Telodvinsky?
No, we were allocated the 7th Brigade and sent north. I've even got I found in the, not me, connection of mine. I helped a guy from Jerusalem who works for the the financial department of the government. What do you call it?
Misrad Otzar.
Misrad Otzar. He was doing his doctorate, and he chose Machal as a subject. He came here twice, and I helped him a hell of a lot. And whenever he found a document in the IDF archives concerned the Machal, he sent to me.
So, I'm sorry, I want to ask you, you get to Televinsky,
Yeah.
and are you guys with the Sabras, or you're with
There
your
are no
own?
Sabras in that camp except maybe the officers and clerks.
Okay, so it's all Machal people.
Mostly volunteers.
And
yes.
you're meeting people from where around the world?
At that time, nothing. I was just in our group of South Africans.
Just South
Only
Africa.
when I got to the 72nd did I meet other people.
Okay. So you have this. Okay, so we're gonna go back. So you're have a few days leave in Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
What do you remember? Where were you going? What were you seeing? What was
I
this?
don't remember the specific places. I remember I saw the Altalena. He took me to see the Altalena, burnt out on the beach. I don't remember the specific places he took me to. His father was a scrap dealer. He was a friend of my father's from a Stettel. I might have his first name recorded somewhere. Yaffa.
So when do you find out? After how many days do you find out that you're actually going to the 72nd Battalion?
When they sorted us out when we were back at Televinsky. They sorted us out and put us on buses and sent us north. Half of the guys, I think there were 14 guys. There was one extra South African who didn't come with us. He became a doctor in Israel. He died, a son of his died. He died at Protea village in Telmond as well. I've got his name here as in charge. He was in charge of the transport. And I only found out when I found this list, when this guy sent me this list. Transport shit. Tzav Nasiya, I think they called it, to the camp. His name was there as well.
So you guys are transported from Televinsky to where?
Well, they dropped the first 7 guys at the 79th camp just outside Akko. It's got a name, St. Jean's. They dropped the 7 there for the 79th. Then they take the rest of us to the 72nd, which was at a camp closer to Naria.
So this is your base.
Base for
This
a
is
while.
your base.
Yeah.
Now, for those who don't understand, tell me what is happening in the war at this moment that you arrive. What's going on?
It was a second truce.
I don't know. Tell me about it. Tell me what's happening
There were
militarily in
Yep.
Israel at this time.
Odd skirmishes here and there, sniper fire, but there was a truce. We got into this camp. It's an old British camp. Most of the camps that we used were old British camps. They were scattered all over. That's when I started meeting guys from other countries. I was put into, oh yes, we had a choice.
But it's still, I need you to tell me the truce. What is going on in the war? Where are the lines? What's happening up north in the Negev,
Who
in
knows?
Jerusalem? You don't know anything.
Who knows? We were good Jewish boys come to fight for the country. Now, I chose, having been in support company in the South African Army, support company is the heavy weapons, 3-inch mortars, small Bren gun carriers, heavier Vickers machine guns. I chose the infantry company, B company. The
In the 72nd.
the other guys in my group went into support company and were trained on a Beza machine gun.
Why did you choose the B company? Why did you choose the infantry?
The riflemen, they were all infantry, even the support company.
Right.
Well, I chose because I knew that there'd probably be more action as a rifleman.
Is
And
that
there
what
was.
Is that what you wanted?
Yeah. And there was about 7 days later.
We're going to get to that in a second.
Yeah.
So you have no idea what's happening around you. You have no idea if you're fighting the
We
Syrians
might
or
have got
the
a copy of the
Egyptians or-
Jerusalem Post here and there, but it was called the Palestine Post then.
Right.
And we might have read something what's happening, we might have been told, but we were training. The kibbutz, the big kibbutz, Lochamei Getot hadn't been built there. We were training in the fields opposite the camp there. And first, do you want to know? First, we were put in what we called a training platoon. There were only 2 platoons in our company. All the newcomers, there were a few other South Africans who had arrived by air. There were some British guys. And the commander of the training platoon was Stanley Medics. He was a Kenyan, but we considered South African Machal because the South African Zionist Fed recruited volunteers all the way up to Kenya, including the Belgian Congo. I think there must have been about 15 volunteers from Belgian Congo. And Stanley Medics and 2 other guys from Kenya, half Jew Ian Walters, and a Cairo-born Egyptian Jew who lived in Kenya, Jack Bannon.
I want to understand something. The 72nd Battalion that you belong to, is the whole battalion Machal people?
No, but a good portion. B Company was English-speaking company.
Okay.
A Company was an Etzel company.
Okay, and what about C Company?
C Company didn't exist when we came, but previously it existed, was a company of Yiddish-speaking people, commanded by an English goy, a good friend of mine today, Derek Bowden, and every time there was a matzavachin emergency, they used to disappear. So by the time we got there was no C Company. And later, in September, late September, or perhaps October, they formed another English-speaking company, D Company, which never grew bigger than 1 platoon. And they had Derek Bowden, the goy, in charge there. He was an ex-paratrooper.
So A Company from the 72nd Battalion is Sabras, who were Etzel people, basically. They were Israeli.
Not Sabras, most of them were probably refugees from Europe.
Okay, so that's my question.
It included 1 platoon of Altalina people, including the late Dov Shalansky, who was Speaker of the Knesset. Now, I didn't know that until I was working, after I sold my cows, I was working as a ticket seller and English guide at the Golani Museum here. And he is a Av Shikul, bereaved father of Golani. His son was killed in Golani. So I used to come and visit down there, and I met him, and he told me I started to learn that we were in the same bloody 72nd.
So you have to explain to me, because I don't understand. The 72nd Battalion of the IDF is
infantry.
Is infantry battalion, and it is all made up out of either refugees that have just come.
Yeah, some suburbs.
Machal people. Up. We're going to stop.
Some suburbs.
So, Joe, I don't understand, and I need you to explain to me, for the record.
Maybe I can't explain it. Who knows?
History.
I'm an old man. It's a long time ago.
The 72nd Battalion, the infantry battalion in the IDF, 1948. We're talking about September 1948. Is made out of 2 groups. A group, B, which you belong to.
That's A Company, yes.
A Company and B Company. A Company is made out of
Etzel people.
All
Etzel people, yes.
That are from
European-born, Israel-born, and 1 platoon that came on Altalina, all refugees.
Are in A.
Hey?
In A group.
A Company, yes.
And B Company is all Mahal.
All English-speaking.
All English-speaking people from Mahal volunteers. How many people roughly can you tell me that you think that were in B Company around?
I can tell you, I've got the at the end of September, I've got a roster. I think it was about 120.
120. And you find yourself in B Company.
Yes.
Your base is near Naharia.
An interesting point I'll point out to you. Whenever I mention to a current Israeli, הייתי בחטיבה 7, איזה טנק היית? מאיזה טנקים השתמשתם? they don't know that at the beginning, Khativa Sheva was basically infantry. It had two infantry. There was a 71st Battalion, which were all, I think, all refugees, all survivors. Except there was one South African physical training instructor. There was an American company commander in the 71st.
Yeah.
Why'd you point to me there?
Because I need you to look at me.
I don't love you. I don't want to look into your eyes. There's a few English-speaking people in there, but basically it was mostly refugees and local people. And that was, what was I saying, the 71st Battalion. The 79th Battalion was called an armoured battalion. The brigade was called the 7th Armoured Brigade. When I arrived, it was commanded by a Canadian, Ben Dunkelman. Now, they were armoured, but was armoured of one or two real armoured cars and mostly home manufactured armoured cars. And there were quite a number of English speakers there. I've got the name somewhere.
Okay, so do you remember your arrival there? To the 72nd?
Got off the buses and we allocated into tents.
And this is exactly what you wanted. This is exactly what you signed up for.
Yeah.
So you're eager for action.
Yeah, had I known that the 89th had more action, I would have tried to get into the 89th, but I didn't know that yet.
Of course, of course. So let's move a little bit forward. You're assimilated into B Company.
Yeah.
Do you meet anybody there that you already know that's already been in B Company? Or are there any familiar faces from South Africa?
No, because the South Africa, yes, there's Monty Katz. He was in transport. He lived in our neighbourhood of Dormfontein. Mo Katz. I'm trying to think of anybody else. I don't think so. There was another one, South African, in transport when we came, but I didn't know him. I don't remember him until later. But Mo Katz, I met him in the toilets or something. I met him in the camp. We had a chat. He lived next to the police station in Dormfontein, yes.
What is going? So the first few days in B Company,
we put into a training platoon.
Putting into a training platoon. What kind of ammunition do you have? Do you remember? What's your personal ammunition?
We had the Czech-made Mauser rifles. We had not insufficient ammunition. As a matter of fact, in the first action we went into on the 7th of September, I was only issued with 20 rounds. So there's still a shortage even in September.
And this is after the the Czechoslovakian army weapons had arrived.
Yeah. The first batch of Czech weapons arrived, it's written somewhere, in the very early stages, a plane flown by Swedish aircrew, chartered by the Israeli government, flew into a place. 3 Brits were killed there later in the fighting, quietly. And the same few days, a ship landed undetected by the British and the United Nations and unloaded the arms. So when the time I arrived, we all had a rifle. Before that, some units you had to wait for a friend to fall before you could get an arm. We all had arms.
What kind of training are you doing before?
Oh, simple based on a British system, which I was used to.
Sure.
That's why I rose quite quickly to be a corporal, because it was English. Had it been Hebrew, you'd have to master the Hebrew language first. So it was simple for me. Yeah. I knew all the basic weapons.
And did you have any idea who your enemy is, who you're fighting against?
In the north, it was the Arab Liberation Army, the ALA, Kaouji. Have you ever heard of Kaouji? Jesus, you guys are fucking ignorant. You've never heard of Fauji or Kaouji?
Tell me.
On the 15th of May, when we declared our state, I think 5 Arab countries plus the Fauji al-Kaouji is called the Arab Liberation Army, not Palestinian Army. the Arab liberation. To me, they're still fucking Arabs. Even though I've got some good friends, Arabs, here in this area. If I go driving into Run, almost everyone wave their arm and wave to
No,
me.
but tell me, I know, but I need you to tell me. Who is you're in the northern part, you're fighting the Syrians, the Lebanese, who are you fighting?
We didn't know we were fighting until the first clash.
Okay.
Because we could have been sent to the Syrian side.
Right.
Could have sent we did some guard duty on the Lebanese border. But let's try and work it out. I've written it here in my thing. I arrived 24th in Israel. I estimate I must have arrived at Somalia camp just before the 30th of April. August.
August.
First, we were sent up in a truce period to clear Kabul mountain. Had a whole group of ALA snipers and observers. From Kabul mountain, you can see the whole main road leading from Haifa to Akko with binoculars. In other words, they had to be, as it's called, we had to get rid of a troublesome group of ALA fighters. So
but there's a truce going on at this time, no?
Oh, there are lots of clashes in the truce, yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about this first clash of yours. And
so we were sent up.
What's the name of the mountain?
Mount Kabul.
And in Hebrew?
Har Kabul.
Har Kabul, okay. Just
There's also an Arab town at the bottom called Kabul, and another one called Tamra.
Just geographically saying, today it is located where, roughly?
Located roughly east of Akko.
East of Akko.
Not very far, east of Akko.
So tell me about what happened there.
We had to remove him, so you'll read some...
You get intelligence that there's...
I don't know anything about intelligence.
I understand.
Read just privates, yes.
Right, but you...
We're ordered to go up and clear
You get briefed before you go on a mission. What is your brief?
Yes, we're going up to clear this hill. Where it was, what it was, we don't know.
Okay, continue.
Well, we go up in our platoon. The company headquarters was the Arab town of Tamra. And we went up, our platoon. I remember going up in line formation with our Sabra officer. Ronnie Landman is still alive in a retirement home somewhere. And we're going up and spread out in open formation, going up slowly. A lot of medicals in a personal story say they had to charge up the hill, which is a lot of bullshit. And every now and then we got an order, fire from the hip. Everyone in line, fire from the hip. And I remember our Sabra commander shouting, "Straighten the line or I kill you all." I thought he meant his accented Hebrew, he probably meant straighten the line or you'll all be killed. But when I became an Aliyah, I asked him about it, he says, "No, I meant it, I would kill you all." Straighten the line or I kill you all. And eventually we got up to the top. We dug in on the right flank of the mountain. This was in the dark, before dawn. And number 2 platoon were on the left flank. We dug in. It was difficult to dig in amongst the rocks. You know, the whole of Galilee is all rocks. And as dawn broke, well-placed Arab machine guns, Bren guns, I could tell the difference because the Mauser is a quicker firing gun than a British Bren.
Okay.
I could tell, well, those who've had experience, even though I wasn't in war with a Bren, but I went on the range with a Bren gun during my training in South Africa. And they opened up with heavy fire. And
this is dawn. This is
dawn, yes.
Dawn, yeah.
And guys are getting hit already.
You see.
Yeah.
This is actually your first time seeing people.
First time under fire, yes.
What goes on in your head when
you haven't got any time to think what's going on in your head. You've got to keep fighting or firing or something. I remember I fired 1 or 2 shots what I thought were Arabs getting close, but most of my 20 rounds I fed the belt of our section machine gun. put into the belt of a section machine gun. Then,
So you donated your rounds to the machine gun
yeah,
that somebody else was firing.
yeah. Not all of them, I had a few for myself. Then, amongst the heavy small arms fire, bullets whizzing around and ricocheting from the rocks, appears our South African Sergeant, David Sussman. He says, my partner, I don't know if you know infantry, we operate in twos in the section, and we got a section commander. The section's about 12 men. And was a Belgian volunteer, Benny Hirschberg. His name, real first name was, what was Jabotinsky called? Benjamin Zev Jabotinsky. His name. So his father must have been a divisionist, because that was his name. And we battled to dig in, and we were lying there ducking under the bullets. All on our flank, we were slightly down the mountain. The bullets went over our heads mostly. And then Dave Sussman appeared and said, look, one of you help us take this wounded man down. We had no stretchers up on there.
Right.
So this guy, this British medic, I think his name was Schmolowitz, a Holocaust survivor who'd volunteered from Britain, or maybe a kinder transport, he was hit in the back and had to be carried stomach down. And we needed 4 men to do it. So he says, one of you come and help us, we need you to. So I was the first to get up. Now that might have been fate as well, because if I had not got up, I might have been killed later, because we took this wounded medic down. I don't remember if we took him to a first aid post halfway down the mountain, all the way down to Tamra, the company headquarters. I don't remember. But when I got back to my section, they had to move, they withdrew, and I heard that Hirschberg had been killed. A burst of Bren gun fire came right through the rock wall and hit him, removed his armpit. Now, had I not been called out to go and take, I might have been hit by the same burst, because we were always together.
Did that freak you out?
It created some thoughts in my mind, the fate business. And later I helped some guys take his body to the rear a bit.
So you did take him off the battlefield?
Yeah, we took him to the back a bit, yes.
But he was dead?
But there were no firing at that time.
Right.
Yes.
But
he was dead, yes.
He was dead. Was that the first time you ever saw a dead body?
Yes. Being a coward, I'm not supposed to. But,
well, you're in battle.
But I spoke to our rabbis, it's allowed in battle if you're fighting, yes. Then,
that must have left a very strong impression.
Well, as I wrote in my story there, after this action, I was seeking adventure before, but after that there's no more adventure. You're just there and you've got to finish the job.
So what happens at this battle? How does this battle end up?
We pushed them off the hill, but in a charge, which all other personal stories say it was a bayonet charge. But the guy who took part, an American friend of mine who led the main squad, and the sergeant was also South African, Jeff Perlman, and the Sabra officer. What was happening, our platoon was more or less going to be surrounded. So Ronnie Landman, our platoon commander, ran to tell them to do something, and the commander, Aya Feldman, and the sergeant jumped up and got the group of soldiers next to him and charged. They call it a bayonet charge, but half of them didn't have bayonets. I hadn't been issued a bayonet yet. But there's a lot of freak stories.
How long would you say this battle lasted for?
Just a few hours.
So you got there at night, settled
dug in,
at dawn they started
had the
shooting
clash,
at you?
yes.
And then
when they had the charge and they disappeared, they frightened them off the mountain, this charge.
Did you take any prisoners?
No, I don't remember. They got away.
Were there any dead bodies of theirs?
That I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
And once you took charge of the
remember,
hilltop,
private, you're in a small way. You don't know what's going on around.
Sure, I understand. But do you remember the feeling that you had when the battle was over? Do you remember this? Because you lost
Three guys, yes.
three guys.
Well, my partner, yes.
Yeah, you lost your partner.
I don't remember any feeling. You're just tired. You're taken back to the camp. But as I wrote in the book, after seeing people being hit, my adventure spirit disappeared. I just became a soldier, having to finish a job that we had to do.
So this battle is your first encounter
Under fire, yes.
under fire. About 10 days.
That's what we call a skirmish in history books.
Well, a skirmish is a skirmish, but it's a battle.
Yeah, people
It's
get
not,
killed.
It's not Gettysburg, and it's not, you know,
Not
it's not
D-Day.
D-Day, but it is a battle.
It's a battle,
It's
yeah.
a battle.
We're being fired at, we're shooting at
your
them.
friends are dying, and you know, it lasts 2-3 hours, but that's
It's a battle, yeah.
it's a battle. I call that a battle, and I think the history books call that a battle. And like
The
I
history
said,
books would call it a
a
skirmish.
skirmish, but it's
Skirmish is a small battle. If you look in the dictionary, that's where the probable definition is.
Do you guys retreat immediately, or do you keep a post up there?
No, we stayed up there.
For how long?
And also what happened, yes, when I was sent ordered to remove the body with two other South Africans who were in the sapper squad, my section disappeared again when I came back. By that time, our American company commander had come up from company headquarters. He wasn't there during the battle. It was managed by the two platoon commanders. And I asked him, "Sir, what do I do?" He says, "Go and join number 2 platoon. They had the most casualties. And we spent another night on there just guarding, sitting in the dugouts. And I got very friendly with these Americans. Even a few days leave, I went with them to Tel Aviv after this clash.
So the clash is over. You go back to Tel Aviv.
No, we
You
go
have a
back
few
to
days-
camp.
You go back to camp, and then you have a few days leave in Tel
That's
Aviv.
right.
What does a soldier do on his leave? You just fought in a battle.
Well, we had no homes to go to. We were the lone soldiers of those days. But the army, Haganah, had organized private homes, hotels. You'd go to the Katzin Ha'ir, and you'd get a chit to go to some hotel or to some private home where you'd spend the night.
Any memories? Any? Let's say after this first.
Later
battle.
on, I remember one in Haifa, when I went to the Soldiers Club in Haifa on Balfour Street. I was given a chit to go and stay on the Carmel with a former Hungarian doctor, or a physician, very wealthy, had a maid and a butler, and it was quite interesting. I stayed, I think, 1 night or 2 nights there on this leave. And later on, I was befriended by a Haifa family, and I even left my big suitcase. I brought it from Tel Aviv and left it with them for a while.
So
I tried to trace him when I came on Aliyah, but I couldn't.
So the first skirmish that you have, you call it the Battle of
Everyone calls it Tamra, the Tamra clash.
the Tamra clash.
Yeah.
That's the clash that you just.
But only when I started researching Machal history, and it was the Kabul Mountain.
Kabul
Today,
Mountain.
eventually, a South African moshav was built on that mountain called Manof.
Manof.
Yeah,
That's where it was, huh? Manof.
Yeah.
I know where Manof is.
yeah,
That's where that battle was.
yeah. You climb up the
Yeah.
mountain underneath the battle site. Yeah. The Arabs are probably firing us from where Manof is today. It was started by South Africans. Today it's full of everybody there.
So the battle for Kabul Mountain is over.
Yeah.
You go back to the
We get-
base.
Then we get
You
sent.
bury the dead.
Eh? No,
Or
we
you-
didn't bury them. They were buried without our knowledge.
Okay,
That's
fine. We're gonna. And then you're sent with your company, Company B,
Yeah, 2 platoons only.
right, to Tel Aviv for a few days.
Yeah, not everybody, but we were, yes.
Yeah.
We weren't sent to Tel Aviv. Some people might have gone to Haifa.
Right.
We got a few days
Yeah,
leave.
you
We
got a
went
few days
to
leave.
Haifa.
You have
Because
a
the
few
South
days-
African Zionist Fed office was there.
What do you guys do? You're on leave. You're having some drinks. You're eating. You're going to the beach. Do you remember
Yeah,
anything?
things like that,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I went to sleep at my father's stettel friend.
And then.
I'm sorry I couldn't trace him afterwards. He died, the old man died before I got to, and I couldn't trace the lawyer afterwards. Look, we had 3 kids. We had a difficult rita at the Carmel Absorption Centre. The kids had in South Africa no children's sicknesses like mumps, measles. But in the Merkaslikra, they had it, all of them, but not together, one after the other. So we were busy with the kids. Then we went to Kfar Chitim, which was our first place of residence here, closer to Tiberias, and a Bulgarian Moshav Shitufi. And we had to learn the language. We were the first English-speaking people there.
But we're jumping already.
Yeah, we're jumping, are we?
We're jumping. Hold on, I want to stop for a second.
Yeah, I know more about Hank Roberts. Yeah. Our next move was on the 11th of September to the Berwa area, today Moshav Achiyud, which was our company headquarters. Number 2 platoon occupied positions on the south side of Akko Safad Road, and our number 1 platoon had held the peak of Camel Mountains on the north side.
So let's talk about
Right
that.
on the top, yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, it was quiet, just a few snipers.
But what was you guys had to hold positions?
Just hold positions to hold a line. It was a truce, no shooting, except some sniper fires from the opposite mountain. Part of our platoon were down on the road to prevent any armored vehicles. I was up on the top, and that's when I got my first unofficial promotion, because the second in command of Cliff Epstein's squad was a Canadian, Jaime Klein, and he was in charge of the machine gun group. So they were put down on the road together with a Sergeant Perlman. We had Sergeant Perlman then. Things had changed because Sussman himself was wounded on Kabul Mountain. And so what remained of the squad was up on top under Cliff Epstein. Cliff Epstein got what they called sandfly fever and had to be hospitalized. So he left me in charge of the small group.
So this is the first time that you actually have command of other
Command
soldiers.
of a few guys, yes.
So, so you guys are holding positions on the Syrian front.
Nothing to do with Syria. This was in the middle of the Galilee. Opposite us was Kawuji's ALA, Arab Liberation Army.
And how long were you there for?
About a week. Then we were hurriedly sent back to camp, relieved by a local sort of home guard unit. And we went back to camp, and we were sent to Sfat for the first planned Hiram operation to clear the Galilee.
Okay, let's talk about this operation, because this is a very big operation.
Quite a big operation.
What is the name of this operation in Hebrew? Mivtza?
Mivtza Hiram.
Mivtza Hiram.
I think after the King Hiram.
And tell me what is.
It was cancelled twice.
Okay.
The first time we were sent to Sfad after Gamel Mountain, and already when we were sent up, I think Bernadotte had already been murdered.
Let's talk about that, because you actually mentioned it here and we didn't talk about that.
About Bernadotte's murder. Yeah, that because of his murder, the first Hiram operation was cancelled or postponed.
Why was he assassinated?
He was an anti-Semite. He was assassinated by Shorty Shamir's crowd. That's the
Is that
Stern
what you
gang.
called him, Shorty Shamir?
That's what was my nickname, because you could barely, but he sat when he was Prime Minister, and he sat at this big desk, you could barely see his eyes. My joke, of course. He was
Mivtza
Hiram, yes.
Hiram. What is happening in Tzfat at the time? I know that Tzfat was, at the beginning of the war, was overrun by the Arabs, and then it was taken back.
That's long before we got there.
Right. So when you what's the situation in Tzfat right now when you get there?
Oh, it's ours. We had a hospital there. We were bivouacked in an Arab cemetery between the tombstones. We were sleeping in with our blankets. And once we were there, we were kept there for 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks, and we were sent on to occupy hills and hold them for a while at night, just to occupy it, no fighting. I think 2 squads of number 2 platoon had an unpleasant experience when they went on to patrol towards Meron, probably through Wadi Amud. They were fired on by our 79th. But you're down in a body, the bullets were probably very high above your heads. And they eventually identified themselves and they got back. No one was hurt.
Friendly fire.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
Well, it happens in war. People, all these clever professors who write histories and write in the papers and editors, they forget that war is not it's not a game. It's a deadly business and cruel. As a matter of fact, Henry Katzer in his book, in his introduction, put some very good words about it.
So, how long does this operation last for?
Well, we didn't do it then. So we went, eventually after two weeks in Sfad, we went back to camp. Then on the 15th of October, I think it was, we were called again to do the Faudem operation again. This time, we weren't, our battalion wasn't operating from Sfad. We were going to operate from Kibbutz Elon. You know where Kibbutz Elon is. And we were sort of hidden in a little forest next to the kibbutz, so the enemy wouldn't see us. And eventually it was cancelled again, this time because of our successes in Operation Yoav in the Negev. Even though people say Israel declared independence, I always say the war of liberation, because we still haven't got our independence today.
Why is that?
Because the world, the guy likes to tell us what to do. We don't have independence. If we don't fall into America's wishes, we're done for. We're not independent yet. That's one of my favorite expressions. For 2,000 years, the goyim of the world has told the Jew what to do. And what's worse, and they can't get out of the habit, but what's worse, we listen. We are not independent. We are bloody masochists, yeah. Let's carry on.
So you are sent back to Nahariya, to your army base near Nahariya.
And on the 15th we went down, yes, this is the 15th, yeah. Then the next time, the operation actually happened. We left our Camp Samaria, must have been the 27th of October, and we were back in Safad, and without even spending time in Safad, we just lay one night somewhere near the hospital there, and on the 28th, the night of the 28th, we were on the move, this time to carry out the operation. And this time our platoon task was to capture the town of Meron. Where all the religious guys go on Lag BaOmer.
And who's it inhabited by then?
There's some Arabs there and occupied by Arab Liberation Army soldiers. And we did the long hike through Wadi Amud, and I make a comment there later on when I was a parent guide on school trips with one of my kids, my daughter. When my kids were on trip, when my boys were on trips, I was very busy. We were at Kwargitim running the effort. And we went through Wadi Amud during the day, and I made a comment that had we known where we were being taken, maybe we would have rebelled, because it was, do you remember Tarzan movies? You're too young, you remember? Where the porters used to travel high up on these narrow paths, and one used to fall with his back. That was more or less Wadi Amud.
Tell me about that evening.
Wadi Amud. So we were there. When we got close to Meron, a burst of machine gun fire hit one of our members, this Jack Bannon from Kenya. He was quite a religious guy, and we heard the guy shout out, Shema Yisrael, you know. But our medic, Lucky Feynman, got to him and patched him up. And our company commander, then American Schutzman, what was his first name? Captain Norman Schutzman.
Okay.
I think he's still alive today. He was a very nice fellow, but he had no experience in infantry. I heard from the Americans that during the World War, he was an anti-tank officer, anti-aircraft officer, stationed at stateside, never left the States. But he was an affable fellow, a nice fellow, and he apparently didn't seem to know what to do then. So we lay in this Wadi. If one guy's wounded, normal infantry, you leave a medic or you leave a soldier to guard him, and you go carry on. You don't stop the whole column for one wounded. So we were in this cold Wadi for some time, and eventually we moved because Derek Bowden, who commanded the other small English-speaking company following us, came ahead and told him to get moving. That I heard from Derek Bowden himself.
And of course you're there yourself.
I'm there lying in the ditch waiting for orders to move.
How long are you guys waiting?
We don't know, it was too long.
Too long.
And we eventually got to Meron. The idea was to attack it from the rear. That's why we went through Wadi Amud. And we got there, it was a bit late, but we carried on. Our platoon was given the task of exchanging fire with the Arabs, firing from the windows of a tomb of what was a famous tomb, the Shatta. I know the name, I've been there so often. There's a song about the guy, the tomb of the famous rabbi who took part in a fighting against the Greeks, I think.
Rabbi Akiva?
Rabbi Akiva bar something. I've got it as a footnote here in the story here. Ben Yochai, Akiva, not Akiva, somebody Ben Yochai, who was maybe it's in chapter 14. Yeah, I'm getting close. Meron, called Merom in the Bible, is a place where Joshua won a decisive battle against the Canaanites. In Roman times, it was taken by the legion in spite of the fortifications. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, one of the leaders of the revolt against the Romans, AD 135, was buried there.
So you have...
I didn't know it was a tomb.
Okay.
I see looks like a big fortress, the Arabs shooting us through the windows.
So your job in this battle, your company, your
platoon, yes,
is to fire directly at them and have them fire at you
exchange
while
fires, yeah. While number 2 platoon went into the tomb, clearing room by room with hand grenades. I don't know if you've seen it in the movies. You said you were in the army. What unit did you serve in?
I was in the Nahal 50, Airborne.
So airborne, you were trained how to go into a town, throw grenades.
It's called Lochama B'Shetach Banui.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I was sent with I was then in charge of a machine gun group because Cliff Epstein then was in command of another section. Jaime Klein, a Canadian, was in command of our squad. Americans call it a squad. The British call it a section. And I was sent to the end of the tomb to make sure no one got out. And one guy did try to get out, and we were so close we couldn't miss. We dropped him. He even looked like an officer the way he was dressed and stuff like that.
So you killed...
We killed him, yeah. He must have been the distance of that shed there where we are here. We couldn't miss. Then after that, 2 platoon came through, and we had to go through every one of the small houses in the village to make sure there's nobody there. And then that's how it ended. Meanwhile, we'd missed the next movement, and luckily Ben Dunkelman, our brigade commander, had to send, he was a World War II experienced officer with a Distinguished Service Order. He had landed with the Canadian Army on D-Day. We were supposed to capture Meron first. Then he would send the 79th Armoured Cars down the road to bypass us and take the next base. But he did it before we finished the job because we were late. Then we moved on next to...
Wait a sec. So when you... Let's go back to Meron for a second.
We lost one guy, a British guy, number 2 platoon. A British guy who was a kinder transport fella.
Do you expel the inhabitants of this village?
There were no inhabitants, just the ALA soldiers.
So basically it was an abandoned village?
The band, probably ALL kicked them out, or they might have run already as at the start of the war, which happened.
A lot of them ran.
Yeah.
So this was an abandoned village held by the ALA?
Soldiers, yes.
How long did it take you guys, how long did the battle last for?
It didn't last very long, an hour or two.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you guys have one casualty, and this is basically...
We had this George Schlachter was wounded by rock splinters.
Right.
The guy from Port Elizabeth. A Canadian
Excuse me.
from the sniper squad was also wounded by rock splinters. I think the South African was wounded in the leg by a bullet, and this Canadian was hit by rock splinters, and
It's all there.
And another South African, what was his name? Klingman.
I want you to find that in your writings right now. So Joe, you killed somebody.
Not personally. I can't claim a personal kill. Very likely our machine gun killed him.
But you'll never know.
We'll never know. I don't even care. Look, war, you kill people. If you don't kill them, they kill you. You know, that's what upsets me about modern historians and media people. They think war is lovely. You're going to have a picnic. You have your mangal, and it's a terrible business. War is a terrible business. People don't realize that.
And what is this skirmish? What is this battle called?
A capture of Meron.
Har Meron.
Not Har Meron, the town, the village of Meron. In our first time we went, our job was to capture Har Meron, which the Americans named the Two-Tit Mountain, You know, it's
But
got...
we'll get to that in a sec. We didn't get to that yet.
That's before.
That's before this?
Yes, when we were in Sfad the first time. Our job was to capture the mountain, but then it was cancelled because Bernadotte was killed.
Okay. So the village of Meiron, can you geographically tell me where it is located today?
Yeah. If you drive on from where you're staying up the mountain, you go past Sfad and you'll end up in Meiron. You mean you don't know geography of the country?
I do know geography. I'm asking this for the record for the camera. You have to understand. I'm asking you rhetorical questions sometimes so that you'll say it on the camera.
It's on the main road between Sfat and Akko. Shortly after Sfat, 23rd of October, South African was killed.
Well, we haven't gotten to that yet.
We're after there already. Hiram campaign was the 30th of October.
So apparently there's a lot of information here that we didn't talk about because you have a lot of
You
pages.
didn't ask me.
Okay, well
I told you, the Hiram operation
was cancelled twice.
Cancelled twice. The second time was the 15th of October. Then in between, we were sent up to attack during the truce on the 23rd of October, probably the night of the 22nd, to attack a Kauji headquarters town, I think it was called Ikrit, up on the Lebanese border there. Our platoon and the number 2 platoon, everyone was engaged. They were in the mountains, sort of watching us and keeping guard over us. And we went there, and Norman Schutzman, our company commander, realized we had orders to get back before dawn because of the truce, that we were not going to get there and get back. So he ordered us to lay down on the mountain there on the peak where we were, on the hill, and open fire in the direction of Ikrit with everything we had, which we did. And then we started to march back along the roads. And while we were getting close, we hadn't reached 2 platoon who was situated in a position to cover us. A stray spent bullet pierced the night and hit Lou Hack, a South African, in his stomach. Now, we had no stretchers. The South African medic, Lucky Feynman, improvised a stretcher by then we had battle dress jackets and rifles and through the sleeves. And we had to get back. We had a long march to get back to Kibbutz Ceylon.
How long was the march?
Oh, I don't remember. But it was a long march, and we moved at we quickened the pace, and we each took turns carrying Lou Hack, and he was convinced he was going to die. We got him to Meiron. An ambulance from our camp, from our battalion, was waiting, driven by a South African, Simon Stern, and then we had our battalion doctor was South African, Dr. I forget his name. Dr. He died recently, and I think his wife might still be alive.
Okay, the name doesn't matter right now.
Harry Bank, yeah, I've got it, yeah. South African medic. Waiting at Kibbutz was our South African medical officer, Harry Bank, and an ambulance driven by South African Simon Stern. We still had considered us to go. Without changing pace, we took turns at carrying the wounded Hack. We finally got to the bush, and the ambulance took him to Naria Hospital. Where the stray bullet came from was impossible to tell. Of course, in the winding roads, it could be friendly fire. Some idiot shot a bullet somewhere. It could be from the Arab side. Nobody knows. You know the winding roads, one day you're facing this way, and one turn you're facing the other way. On waking next morning, we were shocked to hear that Lou had died on the way to hospital. And here's pictures of his burial.
Yeah. So this is part of Mivtzach?
No, this is preparation for it, like patrols. I think the plan in those days, we did a lot of patrols in the Western Galilee to convince Kauji that we were going to attack from Western Galilee. In the end, we attacked from Sfad, the eastern side. That might have been part of the plan, I don't know. I'm not sitting in brigade headquarters. Yeah, when we were going up the second time to Sfad, actually to get to your Chukok, you get this way.
Uh-huh.
But before they built this big road, you had to get to Chukok going down below and past Kibbutz, the one on the lake there. Anyhow, there's a winding road. You get up to Sfad. To a busload of our support company overturned on the road because you drove up without. No one was hurt, but it also contained mortar shells and stuff like that. So luckily it didn't explode. One South African was sent back to Tiberias Hospital for observation, but it was the Beezer platoon, machine gun platoon, that bus turned over. Then later another bus turned over that delayed us getting to Sfad to start the attack on Meron.
But Meron we already talked about.
Yeah, but we haven't got there yet. I'm going back.
You're going back, okay.
On the way to Sfad, which was our starting point. Yeah, well, I made a note. Yeah, our bus was quite full at Samaria. Tex Paskov of the States and I boarded one of the trucks, because we didn't want to stand all the way, loaded with medical and hospital equipment, including stretchers. So we opened up 2 stretchers and we lay on the back of a truck, dozing.
That must have been a great relief.
Yeah, instead of, but we used to get used to standing on the buses, falling asleep. I don't know if you remember the old-fashioned buses. You're too young. One woman describes it in her personal story from South Africa. The buses for Africans in South Africa. Nachal Amud, the pole stream, so named because of a long, isolated rock sticking up from the ground like a pole. Yeah, your story now where Kenyan Jack Bannon was wounded.
That was at Nachal Amud.
Nachal Amud before we got to Meron.
Uh-huh.
David Apple, our CEO, the British guy of D Company. I was phoning one of these days to wish him a happy birthday for his 93rd birthday. I went to Norfolk in England in 2011 for his surprise 90th birthday. I'm very friendly with the family. His kids invited me. His kids are basically Jewish, because the mother was Jewish according to Halakha.
Who is this chap?
Derek Bowden?
Yeah.
He first came to Palestine in 1937 as a young 16, 17-year-old cavalry soldier.
With the British Army.
With the British Mandate
Army.
Yeah. 37 was a man.
Mm-hmm.
He was wounded in the same battle that Moshe Dayan lost his eye.
Okay.
On the clash with the Vichy French forces on the Lebanese-Syrian border. He was always with us. He then...
for the record, let's make it clear that this gentleman, his name again?
He called himself David Apple.
David Apple is not Jewish.
Not Jewish. His real name is Derek Bowden.
And
Thomas Derek Lace Bowden.
And he was in the British Army, and he was here during the Mandate as a British soldier.
Yeah.
Was wounded in the same battle as Moshe Dayan, notorious battle against the French Vichy.
Yeah.
And the Lebanese border.
Yeah. And after he recovered, he spent 6 months in hospital, seriously wounded in the leg, 6 months in a hospital in Jerusalem. After recovery, he joined a British paratrooper unit training near the Suez Canal. He took part in some operations in North Africa, dropping behind the lines on various activities. Then eventually he was part of you've probably heard the movie or seen it, The Bridge Too Far. The British foul up where they couldn't get to Arnhem and they lost. He was wounded again in the same leg. He was sent to a German officers' hospital. He escaped from there, was recaptured, and in his recapture he is being interviewed by an SS officer. And at the beginning the SS officer is quite cordial. Yeah, he's talking to Major Bowden of the British airborne troops. Offered him coffee, a cigarette, and then one of the sergeants walked in and said, "Sir, we found letters to his Jewish girlfriends in Palestine." So then the SS officer gets mad. He says, "You are a lover of the Jews, we'll show you what we do to the Jews." And against the Geneva Convention laws, they punished him and sent him for a month to Bergen-Belsen, where his job was to remove bodies from the Megurim to the pits with a horse and cart. Now, he said that changed his life. After the war, he was teaching parachute jumping in Yugoslavia as a civilian job, and the independence was declared. Yeah, he immediately resigned and flew. I've got the passenger manifest, I think the 3rd or 4th of June when he arrived. Now he and lots of others claim they arrived earlier, but I've got it in black and white.
Tell me, so he arrives here.
Yeah.
And
he was sent to Latrun in the 7th Brigade. And when the 7th Brigade, and he survived the last battle. Latrun, the hardest battles were earlier in May, end of May. And he survived that battle. I don't know what he did, probably as an observer or as an instructor or advisor.
Why did he come here?
Because of his affinity with the Jewish cause. Then he joined the 7th Brigade when it was reorganized in the north and had a lot of English speakers. He was first, as I told you, he was first put in C Company, commanding this Yiddish-speaking company. And when it broke up, he was given a task of starting another English-speaking company, which never developed. Eventually, after Norman Schutzman was slightly wounded on the Hiram operation, they combined the two companies together and called it B Company.
So this guy was kind of like an idol of yours.
Oh, yes.
People looked up to him.
Oh, he was one of the boys. There's stories about him and my friend. One of, eventually, at the end of November, when we had to leave this Camp Samaria, we went to the old British camp on the Tel Aviv road outside Haifa, called St. Luke's. Today it's called the suburb of Shar Aliyah. He was put in command of the full company. Now, Derek Bowden, Norman Schutzman had gone back to America after being slightly wounded.
Mr. Apple.
David Apple, yes. He took over our company. Now we had one guy, Kenny Danker, South African I was transferred from number 1 platoon to number 3 platoon, the former D Company. In my squad I had 6 South Africans and 3 or 4 of the boys, Holocaust survivors. One of them was Kenny Danker, a South African. He was a men's outfitter, but he was the biggest schlumper in the platoon, in the company. Stories goes that often David Apple, in inspecting the troops, inspecting his company, would say to Danker, "What were you in civilian life?" "Men's outfitter, sir." And Bowden used to walk away shaking his head. When he was in squad, I used to have to tie his bootlaces in the mud.
Tell me.
And he was a drinker, but you'd often find the two of them sitting in a bar in Haifa drinking together. Derek Bowden was one of the boys.
But he was an officer.
An officer, yeah.
And he was your officer.
Our officer, yeah.
And he was acknowledged by the newly Israeli army that they need this guy. They need him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was he kind of like a Mickey Marcus kind of
Yeah,
person?
he was kind of Mickey Marcus guy, yeah. He was very experienced in that. He had earned, I'd found out later in correspondence.
And he's still alive?
He's still alive. I got a phone, I think, his birthday's around the 16th of December. If he was 19, 2011, he'd be 93.
Okay. Now that we've talked about, we left off somewhere here where you were... I want to get back on
the
track.
operation in Meron, where we... Yeah, I told you before, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai.
Right.
Basically, I didn't know what that tomb was.
Okay.
Not being that religious.
Of course.
Only in Haifa later, on our leave, I bought a postcard of the place. And then I saw what was written, Shimon Bar Yochai, this tomb.
So after the battle at Shimon Bar Yochai's tomb at Meron,
we moved on next to Jish, which had been already attacked and taken by the 79th half-tracks and armoured cars. They just moved in early in the morning before dawn and just shot up the village. I killed quite a few civilians as well.
Who did?
79th. They didn't know. It's dark. You're shooting at the... And they caught a Syrian volunteer company of Kaouji's Arab Liberation Army while they were disembarking from the buses. And they really virtually wiped them out because they hadn't had time to take up defensive positions yet.
Explain that to me. You were apparently not there at the time when this happened.
No, we hadn't arrived there yet.
So, wait. So you finished the battle at Meron?
Yeah. Then we moved on to Jish, which had already been taken.
What is it called today? Where is it today?
Gush Khalav.
Gush Khalav. That's the name of the settlement.
Yeah, it's a Christian Arab place.
It's a Christian Arab place. You arrived there after the battle?
After it was taken, yes.
And what do you see?
We were given a task of going through a street, checking the villages. I saw a few bodies. And then afterwards we had a warm meal there. And then we started moving on to our next objective.
Before we get to the next objective, you mentioned to me that there was something there about
dead bodies.
The 79th Battalion massacre, killing.
Unintentionally, but I don't understand why you media people are so intent asking about negative things. Why?
I'm not asking about negative things. I'm asking about what you said.
You want to read it? Go and read it in Ben Dunkelman's book.
No.
Go and read it in Chaim Herzog's book.
I'm asking you. Because
we heard that they'd hit...
but it was by mistake. Was it by mistake? Like, I'm just asking.
They just opened fire at the town, driving quickly through with the half-tracks and shooting it at the houses there. There could have been civilians there.
Sure.
And they also lucky they caught a Syrian volunteer company who was going to join the ALA while they were disembarking from the buses. They're just a stroke of luck.
So you guys basically got there when the battle was already over.
Yeah.
The village is already taken.
Yeah.
You probably go just to make sure that everything is secured, that everything is it.
Yeah, the usual infantry job. Yeah.
Okay, now I want you to look at your pages here and let me know where did you guys continue from there. And actually, what month are we in right now of 1940?
We are the last days of October.
The last days of October, 1948.
29th we captured Meron. This was probably the 30th.
Uh-huh.
Then the next task for all of us The whole of the 7th Brigade was Sasa, where Kibbutz Sasa is today.
And this is all, of course, a part of Operation...
Haida, Hiram. It lasted a few days only.
Really, that's it?
Yeah. I've got it just somewhere. Yeah, so I mentioned something interesting. During the clearing of the village of Meron, I noticed what seemed to be a large bomb crater in the center of the village and pondered at the accuracy of our Air Force. This had a sequel. When on leave after this operation, I met Sammy Tucker, a navigator of one of the aeroplanes supporting us at the South African Zionist Fed. I knew him from before. He came from the same town, Benoni, where I used to spend my school holidays. He was a contemporary of my cousin there, of my older cousin. When I congratulated him on his accuracy, I said, "You're crazy, our target was Tashicha, which is about 20 kilometers away." Now at Jish, we started to advance to clear the groves and the hills around Sasa, the next target.
Jish is Tzipat Chalav, is
Gush Chalav,
Gush
yeah.
Chalav, sorry.
The next target now is Sasa. I don't know if you've driven there.
Yeah, Sasa, actually, I've been to there's an army base there today that I
served in.
Yeah, I served in very briefly, but I know exactly where
but
Sasa
is. But you know
is.
the roads from Jish to there
It's very windy.
Very windy.
Very windy.
Yeah.
So you guys have to take Sasa. It's an air village?
We didn't take Sasa, the 79th did.
Okay.
But we consolidated afterwards. The next morning we dug in ahead. You know how the leapfrogging of military groups go.
Yes.
And we dug in after Sasa on on the march from Jish, we were fired on by artillery. Light fire, not heavy fire, while we were spreading in open formation going through the olive groves towards the hills looking at Sasa. Eventually we were put to occupy a hill, and we were relieved at midnight by the Beezer group, friends of mine who had come with. And we were taken with half-tracks. Sasa had been captured, and we were taken ahead to consolidate, where we dug in. We woke up the next morning, we were surrounded by 3 hills. Sasa at the back of us. Today it's a picnic spot.
Surrounded by?
Hills,
just
mountains,
by hills, okay.
Mountains, yeah. I've got it, yeah. We were taken past Sasa on the Tashicha road to dig in and face any counterattack from the direction of the Sasa police station above us.
And of course, this was taken by the ALA after the British left.
It was an Arab village.
Yeah.
Occupied.
No, the police station.
Yeah, the police station, yes. The
Yeah.
British handed over most police stations to the Arabs.
Yeah.
As American friends used to call it, genuine Bedouin Arabs. And we found ourselves in a deep valley, today a nature picnic site, and facing Mount Adir. Soon afterwards, a group of enemy soldiers came out of this police station, coming down the road, and they certainly had not seen us. And before our platoon commander, then was the Kenyan Stanley medics, could plan anything, the trigger happy gunning on the armoured cars that were supporting us opened fire and scared them off. We could have captured them, they would have walked right into us. The element of surprise was now lost. We then started to clear the hills around there, each squad.
So this is all around Sasa?
On the other side of Sasa,
On the
between
others.
Sasa and Tarshicha.
Yeah. And is this held by ALA forces or
yes,
Syrian or Lebanese?
ALA.
Okay. Just
The
for
Lebanese were more in the finger of the Galilee.
right. The Etzba Galil.
Esbar Galil,
Yeah.
yes.
And ALA, just for the record, it's a militia. It doesn't really belong to Lebanon or Syria. It's a militia.
It was led by Kawuji. It had a considerable strength, a lot
Sure.
of volunteers, local people and everything.
Sure.
Now,
So,
number 3 section commanded by Fritz Borenstein, a kinder transport that served in the Jewish Brigade. You know, I don't know if you know about the Jewish Brigade. When it was formed in 1944, notices were put on the signs of British army camps. Jewish soldiers wanting to join this new Jewish Brigade can be transferred. And a lot of them did transfer from the British Army. And then Fritz Bornstein's squad was sent up Mount Adir on the left of Sassa. Medics platoon headquarters group and Cliff Epstein's number 1 section went up the road,
yeah.
and our section, Jaime Klein's number 2 section, headed up Mount Sassa on the right. And we were to meet at an old British, it wasn't a fortress, it was a we met the centre group came under light fire from the police fort.
So these people did fire at you, or they didn't fire at
Not
you?
at our section, at the middle section,
Okay.
going up the road. They hit nobody, just a couple of shots
So
in there.
I want to ask you something. I want to stop you here for a second. This whole operation, Mivtza Harim, Chiram, Mivtza Chiram, is going from Meron to Gush Halav to Sasa.
Then to Malkia.
Yeah, we're going to get there in a second. Now this is like a big operation. This is basically
While we were operating on the east, the 9th Brigade and portions of the 79th Armoured Cars were operating towards Tashikha from the west, from Naria from the west. And we closed up the whole of the Galilee, and we moved so fast that we left most of the Arab villages intact. And that's the guys who built up into towns eventually.
So after Sasa, where are you guys?
Yeah, after this, three of us, we met at a deserted blockhouse. The guys up the road section, Fritz Bornstein on the left, Mount Adir, us on Mount Sasa, and we had to meet afterwards in this old police blockhouse, which we did.
Does this police blockhouse have a name?
No, it was just a circular thing of concrete. I think it's still there. We've been to visit it during Machal tour.
Should I get you some water?
Yeah, you can if you don't mind. This border police blockhouse. We were fired. Some sporadic fire was directed at us from the police fort, including a few mortar shells. While we were all in this police blockhouse. Then at about 1400 hours is
2 p.m.
2 a.m. No,
2
2 p.m. You're right. We moved back to our buses and were driven back to the Sasa crossroads. We refilled our water bottles, given a meal from a supply truck, and rested and moved on northwards towards for the capture of Malkia. We moved through the Christian Arab village of Baram. The residents seemed quite friendly, standing idly at the doors of their homes, carrying on their evening tasks.
So basically, you're going through this village. It's a Christian Arab village, basically.
Yeah, it's Kibbutz Baram there.
Kibbutz Baram isn't Kibbutz Baram right on the border?
Yeah.
Yeah, right on the
Right
border.
We drove up the border road to get to Malkia. And while we were doing there, we stopped and we divided our platoon into two. Sergeant Perlman, Jeff Perlman, a South African, took half the platoon. They got off onto the right and went to dig in on went to occupy some police, another blockhouse. And the rest of us were taken up and put in a blockhouse right under the Lebanese border to guard it for the night. It was very uncomfortable sleeping there. Rocks.
Why is that?
They were all rocks.
And we're also in the month of November now. It's cold.
It might be the 31st of October. It's getting colder. Yes. I think I say we spent a cold night.
So Malkia, just for people who don't know, today it's a kibbutz.
Yeah, it's right on the Lebanese border.
But then it was an outpost.
I think it might have been another village. I'm trying to think.
And the ALA is holding it.
Yeah.
What's next?
And we were left on the Lebanese border as cover. Half our platoon on the right, half our platoon on the left, and the 79th and our A company moved ahead to capture Malkia without us. We were just like cover. Then we moved. While we were there, we heard that there'd been a clash on a mountain in Lebanon on the border, where only after that there were casualties. Only afterwards did we hear that our very popular Sabra officer, Zachariah Feldman, had been killed. While they were digging in on a hill on this mountain, it must have been number 2 platoon, 2 platoon, plus the Beezer crew. Of course, Jaime Jossman can tell you about that battle. Some black volunteers in the Lebanese army, this was now the Lebanese army, had crept up in the night and opened fire with a burst which killed Zachariah Feldman, our Sabra platoon commander of number 2 platoon. My commander was Stanley Medics then, because our Sabra platoon commander, Ronnie Landman, had been hospitalized because of some stomach bug. I don't remember exactly why. He eventually came back to us. So during this operation, Stanley Medics was our officer. And Feldman was killed, and the same burst that killed Feldman, one bullet grazed the lips of Norman Schutzman, the American platoon company commander. But the guys there shot back and stopped these Lebanese soldiers who withdrew, and remained in.
Who were what? They withdrew.
They withdrew. The Lebanese soldiers withdrew.
Were they an organized army? Were they
Lebanese? I don't know if they were. They were organized. Yes, a proper army, proper uniforms, proper equipment. A lot of them must have been Christian Arabs. Of course, Lebanese had a lot of Christians in. As a matter of fact, in this area, the village of Alibun, you pass it probably on your way to Kukuk. When we came to settle in this area in '69, it was 100% Christian. Today it's a big town of, I think, must be 2/3 Muslim today. I wrote a letter to the Jerusalem Post, which might be printed this week, with a bit of luck. My letters are usually too long. One Arab in our High Court of Justice, an Arab judge, mentioned in an editorial in the Jerusalem Post that Israeli independence, after they only built a few Bedouin towns, but nothing was built in the north. So I wrote against it. I said, the Arab villages that survived grew into towns. There was no need to build Arab towns in the Galilee. They all grew into towns to run around the corner here. I remember it was a little village, the triangular villages of the houses climbing up the mountain. Today it's a big town, probably with a bigger population than the entire Jewish population of the Lower Galilee. So anyhow, I don't know if it'll be printed. Just watch the Jerusalem Post if you read it.
Okay, I definitely keep that in mind. I would definitely keep that in mind. So what happened at Malkia? Did you actually were on your company?
Yeah.
You're in A company now or B?
We were B company,
B
always
company,
in B
always
company.
in B company.
D company joined us as the third platoon.
But who actually did the assault on Malkia?
It was A company and the 79th.
And the 79th.
Yeah,
And you guys are on the flanks,
yeah,
like giving cover.
that's right.
And then you hear about
These guys, this Feldman getting killed.
Feldman getting killed, who was the
A sub officer of number 2 platoon.
of number 2 platoon.
Yeah.
What happens after that?
Well, actually, after he was killed, his father, who I think worked for the electrical company in Haifa, came up looking to see his son.
Do you remember that? Did you see that?
I only read about
You
this.
only read about it, okay.
In Lucky Fireman's diary. I
Yeah.
knew nothing about that. Malkia during the day, what many fleeing Arabs. We had in our section Ezra Makmul, an Indian volunteer,
Really?
whose family originated from Iraq.
From Iraq?
He's still alive, living in Toronto.
Nice.
His daughter and son live in Jerusalem, and when he comes to visit sometimes, he calls me. Anyhow, he spoke fluent Arabic because his family originated from
Iraqi.
Baghdad.
From Baghdad.
Yeah.
What was his name, just for the record?
Ezra Makmul. Makmul.
Makmul.
We called him Gandhi, the South African.
Gandhi? He called him
the
Gandhi?
South Africans, we called him Gandhi, his nickname. He was our, like our runner, our platoon runner.
Sure.
At the time, he had a grandmother living in Jerusalem.
So what happens after Malkia is taken?
After Malkia was taken, we sent on to a hill in the border of Lebanon after we left this blockhouse. And we just watched the movements there, nothing, no action.
The movements of who?
Of the Lebanese army on the other side.
Now, is this on the border, the today border, or you guys were inside Lebanon?
We were possibly partly inside Lebanon. Yeah.
And do you remember after the Battle of Malkia, how long did the Battle of Malkia last
Oh,
for?
battles in the whole campaign lasted 3 or 4 days, from the night of the 28th of October until the 2nd of November, I think it was finished.
Amazing.
We moved very fast.
Tell me-
The plans of Ben Dunkelman, the Canadian brigade commander, were very well done. He led us well. He organized the movements perfectly. And we moved so fast that the Alafai, we wouldn't have moved and the Arabs would have buggered off to become refugees, but they didn't. We closed up all these villages here.
So after Malkia, you guys are
We are on a mountain top there.
on a mountaintop mostly doing surveillance.
Just
Because you
surveillance.
know that you're not going forward, you just want to secure.
But something really happened which was significant to me.
Okay.
One of the Canadian members of our squad, what was his name again? I've got it written here. This is the 1st of November. Alta Leff of Toronto.
Arthur?
Alta, A-L-T-E-R, Leff, E-L-E-F-F.
Okay. And who is he?
He was a member of one of the soldiers in our Canadian soldiers in our squad.
Okay.
He had been hospitalized, but when he heard the battle was on, he escaped from the hospital, took AWOL, and went to our camp and started looking for Trampim to get to us. He eventually reached us on the last day when we were, and he came and he said, "You know, Joe, there's a new guy in A Company. His name is Katz, and he's looking for a South African Woolf family from Gordon Road in Johannesburg. That's where I lived when I left for Israel. So, so I didn't take my turn up on the crest where I could have been shot. I wanted to meet this guy. I eventually did meet him. It's in the story here. But his name wasn't, his family didn't come from my shtetl. Perhaps there was another Woolf family living in Gordon Road, and I never followed it up, because by the time I got back from Israel to Johannesburg, my family had moved to one of the other suburbs. And it's a long way from Gordon Road, so it's a pity I didn't follow it up. But following up in my research for family trees, I met a third or fourth cousin in Vilnius who gave me a lot of information about the Katz family, but by working out from that, there was no survivor of the Holocaust who would have been of military age at the time. So maybe it's another Katz family, but still it's something I regret not following it up. Also funny, Gandhi was sent down, our runner, to bring the relieving force up the hill to replace us. Of course, Chiram was over. Miftzam Chiram was over. We were going to be taken back to camp. And a funny incident occurred. He was sent to take them. And the first time he came back that they weren't ready, to say they weren't ready, he forgot the password that was fired on by our sentries. So the next time when he actually brought the replacements up, he started shouting what word, what do you call it again?
The sisma?
The sisma, what do you call it in English? The
password.
The password, yes. So when he came back, he was shouted the password all the way up from the bottom till he got to the top, bringing the relief force for us. And we drove back to our camp at Samaria near Naria through the new open road, the northern road, the road direct from Sfad to Akko, before we had to go all the way down via Fuller. Now we went straight, we drove straight through, yeah.
So, is Mivtza Chiram over?
Over, yes.
Okay, I need you, before we continue, to explain to me in a sentence or two, what was the objective of this operation? To
occupy every area until the Lebanese border. To clear the Galilee of Arab army forces. Some Arabs might have left as refugees, but a lot of them stayed.
As far as your knowledge, what was the hardest part of this operation? Maybe you weren't in this specific part, but as far as your knowledge,
of the general operation.
Yeah, of Chiram, of Mivtza Chiram.
Movement, which was well planned.
The movement was the most difficult part.
Yeah. Up the
terrain.
Winding roads, the terrain, digging in the rocky terrain.
Did you sleep at all in these few days? Do you remember anything? What do you like?
We had snippets of sleep, I suppose we had. Dozing off here and there.
So Operation Hiram
is over.
It is
the
beginning of November 1948.
Yeah.
Okay, what I think we're going to do right now is we're going to stop.
Yeah.
We're going to stop here because we're going on to a new chapter. We're going to take. I'm gonna definitely. I think that's a good. Or actually, yeah, this is a good time to stop.
Do you want me? Would you like me to take you to lunch to some Arab restaurant?
Hold on a second.